we would like to open the floor for questions now. So if anyone has any questions, please raise your hands. Yes?
Just talk a bit more about the UK awards. I'm no expert and I don't really understand the full significance of synthetic biology. And also, I imagine if we go and ask DEFRA about the geoengineering, I mean, they might well argue that this is something that we need to do if we're going to keep climate change below a certain temperature. So can you perhaps just elaborate on why you're unhappy with geoengineering projects that were being undertaken by the UK, and as a supplementary to that, were those projects being undertaken simply by universities within the UK, or was this a government-sponsored initiative?
I'll just give a few of the details. The BBSRC, the Biotech and Biological Sciences Research Council, was involved in funding it, so that means it was public money. The UK declares that it is independent from this and can't stop it. But then on the other hand, it's obviously obvious that the economic interests in the UK in developing synthetic biology and taking a lead in geoengineering hardware, for example, like the hose and balloon project, they're very clear. And I've been in meetings where the scientists who are developing these things and getting patents on them have said that they simply didn't understand why there was such a fuss. So why is there such a fuss? Well, basically, we have a lot of work to do to even understand the interaction between climate change and ecosystems and biodiversity. This is a highly complex issue. We know that the modeling is not sufficient to really tell us what's happening in different areas, except that putting sulfur dioxide particles in the stratosphere could alter the monsoon. I think one of the reasons why we were so appalled by the timing was that it seemed to be sending double signals. The UK was writing a report to the CBD about the impacts of geoengineering, and at the same time, they were planning, or universities were carrying out an experiment which might seem quite innocent in itself, but to us very clearly sent a very loud signal. We are carrying out these experiments because we think we ought to know more. What they always say, we ought to know more about how to do geoengineering. We don't want to do it, but we need to know more about how to do it. What we would say is that we need to understand more about the systems that we're interfering in before we even think about geoengineering. For example, there are many non-geoengineering ways in which one could really tackle some of these issues to do with agroecological food production and really trying to work on forests in a proper way, not just for red or for monocultures. So we feel as though there's a huge debate to be carried out before we even begin. So those are some of the answers, but I would like Sylvia to give more on that.
Yeah, just to build up a little bit, because also ocean fertilization is also a geoengineering technology. And for instance, in the case of the UK, they have been very actively, in a very discreet kind of way, but openly promoting solar radiation management. That means that instead of reducing gases on the Earth, they will try to cover the sun. But the idea in itself is a bit crazy for any person that never heard about it. But the problem is that if, for instance, if they could deploy this, they want to do a artificial volcanic cloud over the Arctic. Well, this SPICE experiment that Helena mentioned in the UK, it was testing hard way to do that, how to deliver these particles. But it's not about the experiment in itself they did. It's about if they do this. There are, by now, in June this year, 21 different climatologists and climate models show that it will be impacts on the tropics, changing the rain patterns, producing droughts. So that will mean that if the UK and the US, who is promoting this kind of technology, could do this cloud, they will alter the monsoons and the winds. So people in India and in the whole Asia will see their foods of water and food endangered, as in Africa, as in the Amazon. So this is such a dangerous technology, so it shouldn't be there. Why are we at all in the UK or anywhere else devoting resources to such a dangerous technology that can be used by very few countries or even by private companies, that, like it happened in Canada now with ocean fertilization, endangering the global commons and the livelihoods of many more than will never even know what happened? So this is one of the backgrounds on why the Convention on Biological Diversity took a decision to ask the government to not deploy any of these technologies. This is a consensus decision by 193 governments. So it's a serious matter.
I think just to make quite clear, if you put sulfur dioxide particles into the stratosphere, you might think that you want to protect the Arctic, but as Sylvia was saying, you don't know where they're going to go. This is the point. And the government chief scientist 2 years ago was talking to someone who was promoting this and saying, we don't know where they will end up. And also there's the problem of the ozone layer and the interaction with that and stripping that. So,
yeah, just the latest one, sorry. If they could deploy this solar radiation management in form of this volcanic cloud, which is the most promoted proposal on geoengineering now, it's called solar radiation management, they could worsen two of the main biodiversity related problems. One is ocean acidification, and the other one is the ozone depletion. And the scientists promoting this, they know that. So they know that it could have this kind of consequences. So we have like 9 main environmental problems for the planet, and 2 of them will be worsened by solar radiation management. So the only thing we need to think is how to rapidly, quickly get these governments, instead of putting money on this research, get together to see how emission reductions are done. That is what we need to do to protect biodiversity and start really fighting climate change.
and just one final point on that. If you say to them, we must reduce emissions, they say, oh, that's not realistic. We really can't do that. We certainly can't do that and grow economically. So.
If there's no other question, I have one. The high-level segment is starting today, and we have a lot of distinguished delegates who have arrived and have a couple of days to deliberate. What is your message to them?
Well, just to give a last message on these issues, but I'm sure that others can add on other topics that are very important here. We think it's essential in this case that Canada explains and is responsible for why they have been supporting this or letting it pass, this experiment. But also that governments here take a decision to strengthen the geoengineering moratorium. So these kind of experiments are not allowed, not even the testing of hardware in open air, in fields experiments. That's on this particular matter, I think that this should absolutely go to this, to the reasoning of the high-level ministers and others meeting now.
Could I just make a quick point before? I'm sure the youth have a lot of points that they would like to make, but my main point would be about the commodification of nature. The EU, as well as the UK, have got policies in place to basically set up offset programs and payment for ecosystem services and so forth. What we have to remember is that this always stands in the way of reducing emissions and changing our development model, which they find too difficult and too unpopular in the short term, as governments are always thinking, to actually carry out. So our call to the high-level segment would be reduce your commitment to the commodification, stop your commitment to the commodification of nature, and really commit, show political commitment and political will to a collective effort to reduce emissions. Let's really get together and realize that we have a common problem, and countries, instead of disputing so much, should come together on that, accept that the industrialized countries really must live up to their commitments that they've made so many times to actually put forward finance for carrying all these things out, for looking after biodiversity. This is essential.